How did a 9-year-old mention the exact location investigators kept sealed in a cold case file? That question stops Officer Grant Holloway the moment he reads Brielle Morton's Christmas letter. A letter meant for Santa, not law enforcement. A letter containing a detail detectives never made public. Brielle is seated at her kitchen table, carefully shaping each word in her red notebook while her mother cooks behind her. Lila Morton glances over casually, then freezes when she spots a sentence that shouldn't be there. Across town, Pastor Vernon Hale finishes locking up the church, unaware that his building, silent for years, is about to return to the center of an old investigation. Instead of toys or candy, Brielle wrote, "Please help the lady they found near the back of the church. I don't want her to be forgotten again." The same restricted location printed only in the sealed case documents. Lila rereads the line 3 times. She knows her daughter never heard the story. The discovery happened years before Brielle was born. There were no documentaries, no news reruns, no town meetings discussing it. So where did she hear it? And why would she use the word again? As if she understood the woman had been overlooked, Deputy Shea Alder stops by the Morton home to ask routine questions. Brielle isn't nervous. She explains calmly that she wrote it because she remembered people talking outside the church last week. But the problem is immediate. No one had been talking outside the church. The area behind it had been closed off during renovations for months. And Brielle mentions another detail she shouldn't know: the color of the jacket the missing woman was last seen wearing. A detail authorities kept sealed to filter out false leads. Deputy Alder leaves the home unsettled. Officer Holloway reopens the old file. There it is, same jacket color, same location, same detail a small child should have had no way of knowing. Every answer only raises more questions. Why did Brielle describe it so accurately? Where did she hear these details if no one in town was talking? And why would she include it in a Christmas letter meant for Santa? The case that had sat untouched for 12 years is suddenly alive again. Why would a child mention a detail detectives never photographed? That question pushes Officer Grant Holloway and Deputy Shea Alder to revisit the church grounds for the first time in years. The winter air is sharp as they step behind the building, walking the same path investigators searched over a decade ago. The renovations have cleared out old brush, revealing angles they couldn't access before. And then they see it, the exact spot Brielle described in her letter. The soil looks ordinary at first glance, until Shea notices a small indentation near the fence line. Not fresh, but consistent with something heavy once placed there long ago. A detail never released, because the original officers believed it was meaningless. Brielle shouldn't have known it existed. Holloway calls Lila Morton for clarification. She insists Brielle doesn't know the case, doesn't hear adults discussing it, and has never been behind the church alone. So how did she describe a specific indentation investigators never mentioned publicly? The cold case file begins to shift. One overlooked name resurfaces. Thomas Rayburn, the handyman who worked near the fence line the week the woman disappeared. He was cleared, but his work logs had gaps. 47 minutes with no documented whereabouts. A space of time investigators dismissed years ago, now impossible to ignore. Why did Thomas Rayburn disappear from his work route during the exact window the victim vanished? That's the question that pulls Officer Grant Holloway deeper into the forgotten gaps of the old investigation. He spreads the original paperwork across his desk, tracing Rayburn's handwritten timesheet with a highlighter. Every entry is neat, consistent, except for the missing 47 minutes on the day of the disappearance. The gap sits on the page like a stain that was ignored for too long. Deputy Shea Alder cross-checks the church's security logs from that week. Most were corrupted by age, but one entry remains intact. A door sensor activated at the back storage shed during the same 47-minute window. Rayburn never mentioned going near that building. Holloway revisits the interview transcript from years ago. Rayburn claimed he spent that time fixing gutters at the front entrance. But no maintenance request was filed that day. And there's no proof he was ever at the front of the church. If he wasn't at the front, was he behind the shed? The exact place Brielle unknowingly referenced? Shea circles one more overlooked note in the file. A witness reported hearing a woman arguing with an older man near the shed that same afternoon. The description never matched anyone. Until now. For the first time in 12 years, the case has a direction. Why did the only eyewitness hesitate to name the man she heard arguing that day? That's the question that sends Deputy Shea Alder to the doorstep of the one person whose statement never received a follow-up. Marissa Dole opens her apartment door slowly, surprised anyone still cares about a case she assumed was forgotten. Her original statement sits in Shea's hands, one brief paragraph that mentions raised voices behind the church. But Marissa's face tightens when Shea asks her to walk through that afternoon again. Marissa explains she never gave a name because she wasn't sure. But she remembers the man's posture, the way he stood too close, blocking the woman's path. And one detail slips out that was never recorded. He kept wiping his hands on his jacket like he was nervous. Thomas Rayburn had a documented habit of doing exactly that, noted by his former supervisor during routine evaluations. Shea asks Marissa if she could recognize the man today. Marissa hesitates, then nods slowly. If you show me the old roster, I'll know. For 12 years, investigators believed she had nothing more to offer. But her memory hasn't faded. It's sharper now, clearer, more certain. If her identification matches Rayburn, why did he insist he was nowhere near the shed? Officer Holloway prepares the personnel photos. Marissa's hand trembles slightly as she scans each face, then stops on one. Why did Marissa identify a man the investigation cleared without hesitation? That's the moment the cold case shifts from uncertainty to direction. Officer Grant Holloway lays out the old personnel photos one by one on Marissa Dole's coffee table. She studies each face carefully, her breathing tightening as she moves down the row. Then her hand lifts, hovers, and lands firmly on a single photograph. Marissa's voice comes out low but steady. This is him. This is the man arguing with her. The photo she's pointing to is unmistakable. Thomas Rayburn, the handyman eliminated years earlier. Holloway feels the weight of that name all over again. He doesn't argue, doesn't influence her, just asks what made her certain now. Marissa explains that what stood out wasn't the face, but the stance. Shoulders slightly angled, left foot turned outward, hands wiping. Against the jacket. The same posture she remembered from that afternoon behind the church. Shea reviews Rayburn's original interview. The posture was noted by his supervisor. The jacket was described in the sealed evidence log. The timeline lines up exactly with the 47-minute gap. If Marissa recognized Rayburn so clearly, why did the earlier investigators dismiss her statement entirely? Holloway thanks her and steps into the hallway, the cold air hitting him hard. For the first time, the case has a witness willing to stand behind her memory, and a suspect who may not have been truthful from the start. Why did the original investigators remove Rayburn from the suspect list so quickly? That's the question Officer Grant Holloway digs into as he reopens the full archive of the 12-year-old case. The old storage room smells of dust and cardboard as Holloway pulls out the binders no one has touched in years. Loose pages fall out, notes, timelines, interview logs, all marked with different handwriting styles. One folder labeled Rayburn, cleared, sits thinner than it should be. Inside, Holloway finds something that stops him. Rayburn was cleared based on a single phone call, an alibi confirmed by a supervisor who later left the county under investigation for falsifying work records. That detail was never revisited. Deputy Shea Alder cross-checks the time card. The signature verifying Rayburn's location during the missing 47 minutes doesn't match the supervisor's standard signature. It looks rushed, different slant, different pressure. A possible discrepancy the first team never questioned. Retention question if the alibi wasn't valid. Was Rayburn ever actually cleared? Holloway requests church maintenance logs from that year. A single line stands out. Back shed lock replaced. Request initiated by T. Rayburn. 2 days after the woman disappeared. Rayburn had access. He had opportunity. And now his alibi is falling apart. For the first time, the cold case has enough inconsistencies to reopen formally, and a suspect who may have slipped through because someone didn't look closely enough. How could a single letter from a child reopen a case that everyone else had given up on? That question drives Officer Grant Holloway and Deputy Shea Alder as they gather the final pieces. Marissa Dole reviews her statement one last time, steady now, finally feeling confident to face what she saw 12 years ago. Lila Morton watches Brielle quietly at the table, unaware her daughter's innocent words sparked the breakthrough. Holloway compares notes, timelines, and the unchallenged alibi. Everything points to the same man, Thomas Rayburn. Rayburn is brought in for questioning again. Under the pressure of the new evidence, eyewitness identification, sealed location details, and inconsistencies in his old alibi, cracks begin to show. He can no longer deny being at the shed during the 47-minute window. The missing woman's family is notified. For years, they wondered if anyone remembered her, if the case would ever be solved. Now, finally, the truth comes into focus. Brielle's simple act of writing a letter, a child's innocent observation, has changed everything. How many other cold cases might a single detail, unnoticed for years, bring back to light? Justice, long delayed, is now on its way. Thomas Rayburn is formally charged. Investigators hope the family can finally find closure. Case reopened, Justice SERVD. If you want more stories that reveal the hidden truths behind unsolved mysteries, subscribe to the Veil of Secret and never miss the next chilling revelation.